our fellow members and the other invitees. We appeal to the members to support the contribution to ICA COVID Relief Fund. Situation like this would support to collaborate with the government initiative to scale up governmental effort to help those in distress. Our SCRC chairman, Sri Dunga Chand Jain sir, requested every member to contribute at least 5,000 to this fund. Looking forward for your generous contribution in this special circumstance in the interest of mankind. Instruction regarding the Zoom meeting. All the participants are enabled as mute during the entire session. We request all the members to ask the queries after the end of the session by clicking the option in the reaction button, which was displayed down the screen. By clicking this one, we can enable them to unmute so that the query can be raised by each person individually. If anybody wants to convey during the meeting, you can do by way of clicking chat, which is available at the bottom of the screen. We also plan for another study circle session on Monday, coming Monday, by Sri Hari Govind sir on recent GST notification relating to COVID-19 and recent advanced ruling judgment under GST. I wish the member will enjoy today's session and make it a grand success. Over to you, Speaker sir. Sri Meenakshi sir.
Thank you, madam. Good evening, one and all. I have great pleasure in welcoming you.
Your voice is not audible, sir.
Is it audible now, madam? One minute. Is it audible, madam? Audible now? Madam, is it audible now? Yeah. I have great pleasure in welcoming you all to the study circle meeting on the Direct Taxes Vivad Se Vishwas Act brought in by the Government of India for settlement of direct tax disputes. I thank the Pondicherry
branch. Your voice is not audible.
I think everybody is saying it's audible, madam.
No, sir.
I'm getting message from everybody that it is audible. Just a moment, members. Audible, madam? Madam, it is audible now?
Okay, sir.
One minute. I thank the Pondicherry branch of SARC of ICAI for organizing this study circle meeting despite very many odds, the lockdown, the technological challenges, etc. As chairperson has already requested, I request all the participants to mute their audio and unmute the same only if they wish to talk or raise any points so that the discussion can proceed on an orderly basis. Observations can also be shared through the chat window available in the Zoom application. I am sharing the presentation detailing the points for discussion. Hope all the participants can view. I hope it is visible now. The presentation is visible now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. See, litigation is a bane in our Indian taxation system. The courts and appellate authorities in India are saddled with ever increasing litigation. Just for the information of the participants, as per the information furnished by the Government of India to the Parliament, the number of income tax appeals pending at various judicial fora stood close to 4.78 lakhs as at the end of the financial year 2018-19. This is in terms of numbers. The VSV Act is aimed at reducing the direct tax litigation. Now let's get into the detailed discussion on the various aspects of the VSV legislation. For ease of understanding and deliberation, we can discuss the topic under the following heads. First, objective, what this Act proposes to achieve. VSV milestone dates, the chronology of dates involved in operationalizing this particular Act. What's the broad theme of the Act? The scope and applicability of the Act, what cases are within the ambit of the Act and what cases are not covered within the ambit of the Act. Then we will discuss what's the meaning of disputed tax and tax arrears, the two most important terms which we need to understand. Then we will discuss what is the amount to be paid. This is the most important portion which deals with what is the amount to be paid by the taxpayer for settlement of the tax dispute. Then we will discuss what's the procedure for making the application, how it is processed by the officers, the timelines for various activities, etc. And the next important thing we will discuss is what's the immunity granted, which is one of the key benefits conferred by this particular Act. We will then discuss some miscellaneous aspects. Mostly these are items clarified by the CBDT in the circular issued by them. And lastly, the overview of the forms, and also we will see some screenshots of the forms, how it is to be filled, and etc. Lastly, we can take up any questions from the participants. Moving to the next slide, the objectives. As given in the Statement of Objects and Reasons to the Vivad Se Vishwas Bill, the Act seeks to achieve three objectives. One, it seeks to reduce the litigation pending at various appellate and judicial forums before the CIT appeals, the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, the High Courts and Supreme Court. This Act will help to reduce the quantum of disputed tax demands struck at these appellate forums. Around 9.32 lakh crore is stated to be struck in litigations. As a percentage of actual collection of financial year 18-19, which is pegged at 11.37 lakh crore, this works out to a staggering 82% of the actual revenue for the financial year 18-19. So that's the quantum of tax litigation that is struck in before various fora. So the bill seeks to reduce the quantum of litigated revenue. Second objective of the Act is to realize the much needed revenue for the government in a timely manner. As the old saying goes, the government seems to believe that a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. They don't want to wait till 5 years or 10 years when the litigation will be over to realize the tax revenue. They want to realize it immediately. Lastly, the reduction in the quantum of litigation will help save time, efforts, and energies of both the taxpayer as well as the revenue. The scheme also seems to have been inspired by the success of the Sabka Vikas Dispute Resolution Scheme, which was launched last year to settle the indirect tax revenues. It is stated that around 1.89 lakh crore litigation has been settled under the scheme. Of course, the scheme had a very sweet deal in the sense that the taxpayer was required to pay anywhere between 30% to 60% of the tax amounts, while granting complete waiver of interest, penalty, which was at staggering levels, and in many cases, which was much more than the actual tax demand itself. Now let's see the milestones. The scheme was announced by the Honorable Finance Minister in her budget speech. One second. The scheme was announced by the Honorable Finance Minister in her budget speech 2020 on 1st February 2020. The bill was introduced in the Lok Sabha on 5th February 2020. The government held extensive consultations and took the views of our own institute, industry, and legal fraternity, wherein a lot of issues were raised. The government has proactively considered many of these representations, and when the final bill was passed, many of these suggestions found place in the Act. For example, allowing such cases with tax demand of less than 5 crores, formula for arriving at the tax dispute itself. Earlier, the bill had a formula A plus B minus C minus C plus D and things like that, which was giving erratic results in some cases. Allowing cases where enhancement notices have been issued by the CIT appeals, allowing revision cases, etc. So many changes have been there from the bill stage to the Act stage. The original provisions of the bill were amended, taking into account the representations received. The bill was finally cleared by the Lok Sabha on 4th of March 2020, and on the same date, the CBDT issued a circular clarifying various provisions and aspects of the Act. The Act received the presidential assent on 17th March 2020, which then became the law of the land. The CBDT then proceeded to issue rules on 18th of March 2020, which was followed up by notifying the procedures, designated authorities under the Act. Amidst this, there was this outbreak of coronavirus, as a result of which the government has promulgated the Taxation and Other Laws, Relaxation of Certain Provisions Ordinance 2020 to defer the timelines as originally prescribed under the Act. We shall see the details of the deferment in the later slides. We'll now move to the theme of the Act. In a nutshell, we shall see what's the theme of the Act. The theme of the Act is to provide for a resolution mechanism for the direct tax dispute. That's a simple theme. Actually, this Act itself is very short with only 12 sections, 11 rules. Of course, the number of clarifications provided is 55. The taxpayer, what needs to be done? The taxpayer needs to file a simple declaration, pay a certain amount of the disputed tax, and he walks out of the litigation. The government is letting go the interest on the tax arrear while granting complete immunity from penalties and prosecutions. This is broadly the theme of the Act. Now we will move to the to see what cases are covered within the ambit of the Act and what cases are not covered under the ambit of the Act. Cases covered under the ambit of the Act. See, first we need to understand that the government has laid down a cutoff date. That is, they have defined it as a specified date, which is 31st of January 2020, to determine the eligibility of cases to be allowed under the Act for settlement. First, all appeals pending before appellate forums, be it the CIT appeals, the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal, the High Court, and Supreme Court, are covered under this Act. The scheme also includes writ petitions pending before the High Court and Supreme Court as on that date within its ambit. Next is, there would be cases where the time limit for filing appeals had not expired as of 31st of January 2020. This could be either orders from the appellate forum or orders from the assessing officer himself, where the time limit for filing appeal had not expired. So all such cases are also covered under the ambit of this Act. Next is cases which involve transfer pricing additions. As you are all aware, in cases in the cases of eligible assessees, the AO would have to pass a draft assessment order wherever transfer pricing additions are involved. Of course, it will take into account the corporate tax additions also in such cases. The assessee had the option of filing his objections before the dispute resolution panel, which will then pass an order containing directions to the AO as to how to finalize the assessment vis-a-vis the issues framed in the draft assessment order. On receipt of the directions, the AO passes the final order in accordance with the directions given by the DRP. The Act covers cases in two scenarios, where either the case is pending before the DRP or where the DRP has given directions but the AO has not passed the final order. Both these cases are covered under the ambit of the Act. The next is revision petitions filed by the assessee under section 264 of the Act, which is pending to be disposed of by the Commissioner of Income Tax concerned, are also covered under the ambit of the Act. The Act also covers TDS, TCS appeals and related matters. As will be seen in the subsequent slides, the Act does not cover such cases. All of you will know that there is a special procedure for search related assessments for the block period. However, the exception is if the disputed demand is less than 5 crores, then such cases are allowed to be proceeded under the Act. Next, let's see what cases are specifically barred from under the Act. As already stated, search-related assessments are not covered. Of course, with the exception wherever tax demand is less than 5 crores, then they can come under the ambit of the Act. The assessment year in respect of which a prosecution is instituted on or before 31st of January 2020 is also not covered. I'm sorry, the slide, I think it states as 31st of February. It should be read as 31st of January 2020. Next is, if the tax arrear involves undisclosed foreign income, then such a case is out of the ambit of the Act. Wherever assessments involve undisclosed foreign income, it is out of the ambit. Assessments based on information obtained based on DTAS, that is not covered. And to any person where detention orders have been issued under the Coffee Posa Act is also not covered. Next is the any person in respect of whom prosecution has been instituted as at 31st of January 2020 under the following 5 acts are excluded. So what are those acts? Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967, Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act 1985, Prevention of Corruption Act 1988, Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002, Prohibition of Benami Transactions Act 1988. Also, if the person has already been convicted under the aforesaid laws, he cannot take benefit under the Act. Then, wherever prosecution for an offence has been instituted as of 31st of January 2020 by an income tax authority for an offence punishable under the Indian Penal Code, such cases are also not covered. So are cases where the person has already been convicted in respect of such prosecution launched, he is also not covered. Lastly, the Act will not apply to any person notified under Section 3 of the Special Code, Trial of Offences relating to Transactions in Securities Act 1992. That is, persons who are linked to the security scam on or before the date of filing of such declaration. So they are not covered. So next we'll move to the important topic. So what is the meaning of disputed tax? See, broadly, disputed tax will mean the amount of tax payable, and here the tax payable will include surcharge and education cess on the quantum of additions involved, or in the case of a departmental appeal, on the quantum of income on which relief has been allowed by an appellate forum. Please note that it can be a mix of both in case of cross appeals, which is frequent in the before ITAT, HC, etc. In line with the list of cases covered as we have already detailed, the Act has proceeded to define the meaning of disputed tax for each of the specified category of this case. So first is where appeal, writ petition or special leave petition is pending before the appellate forum as of 31st of January 2020. So what is the disputed tax here? It will be the amount of tax payable if such appeal were to be decided against the appellant. So in the case where an order in appeal or in a writ petition has been passed by an appellate forum on or before 31st of January 2020, that is, you have got a favorable order and the time limit for filing such appeal against such order has not expired as of 31st of Jan 2020. The amount of tax in this case, right, the disputed tax will mean the amount of tax payable by the taxpayer after giving effect to such order. Next is where the order is passed by an AO on or before 31st of January 2020 and the time limit for filing appeal against such order has not expired as of the specified date. So in this case, the disputed tax will be the amount of tax payable by the appellant in accordance with such order. For example, the assessing officer has passed an order on say 1st of January 20 or 2nd of January 2020, and so the normal time limit is 30 days from the date of receipt of the order to file an appeal before the CIT appeals. So in this case, the time limit had not expired. So in this, the disputed tax will mean the amount of tax payable by the appellant in accordance with such order. Next is where objections filed by the appellant are pending before the DRP as of the specified date. So here the disputed tax would mean the amount of tax payable by the appellant if the DRP were to confirm all the variations proposed in the draft assessment order. Whatever the assessing officer has proposed in the draft assessment order, whatever is the tax impact on that, that's the disputed tax. See, next is where the DRP has issued directions to the AO, but the assessing officer has not passed an order under 144.13 on or before the specified date, where DRP directions have come, AO still has not passed the order. In this case, right, the amount of tax that would be payable by the appellant as per the order to be passed by the assessing officer in accordance with the directions of the DRP. See, DRP has given some relief. So whatever relief has been given by the DRP, allowed by the DRP, after considering that, what will be the tax payable if the assessing officer had passed that order? So that will be the meaning, that will be the disputed tax. Where application for revision under section 264 filed by the appellant is pending. So as we said, right, revision applications under section 264 are also covered. So in this case, right, the amount of tax payable by the taxpayer if the application for revision was to be rejected. So if it is rejected, whatever is the tax that will be payable, that's that will be the disputed tax. Where the Commissioner of Income Tax Appeal has issued an enhancement notice under section 251. The CITs can enhance the assessment during the course of the appellate proceedings. In case they have issued such notice, whatever is the amount of tax payable by the appellant in respect of the enhancement proposed, in addition to the amount payable to the dispute relating to the disputed issue. Already there is an issue. On top of that, he is going to now enhance that. So both, whatever is the disputed issue, tax payable on the disputed issue, plus whatever is the quantum of enhancement made, tax due on that. So that has to be, that is also to be included. Next is, so this is a peculiar case where in case the disputed tax relates to reduction of tax credit carried forward under MAT or AMT, alternate minimum tax, or where a case involves a dispute which involves carrying forward of a loss or depreciation computed, then in this case, right, the SC has two options. Either he can pay the disputed tax in accordance with the formula, what formula we will see later, and carry forward the MAT credit loss or depreciation without disturbing it. Alternatively, he has the option not to pay the amount, but restrict the carry forward of MAT or AMT as the case may be, or the loss or depreciation to the subsequent years. So that option has also been provided under this act. Next, this is the most important thing. See, disputed interest means any interest determined under the provisions of the Act, that is the Income Tax Act, where such interest is not charged or chargeable on the disputed tax. That is condition number 1. And an appeal has been filed by the appellant in respect of such interest. We'll discuss penalty and then we'll on the same basis. Disputed penalty means any penalty determined under the provisions of the Act, where such penalty is not levied or leviable on the disputed income or disputed tax, and an appeal has been filed by the appellant in respect of such penalty. So here we need to understand, see, there can be a quantum appeal and there can be a penalty appeal. Okay, see, in this particular case, the penalty appeal, the quantum of penalty is directly linked to the disputed tax in the quantum appeal. So in that case, the quantum, the penalty appeal, right, whatever is the penalty amount involved, that will not be disputed penalty in accordance with this definition provided. I think this is very important to understand, because if that qualifies, if we state that as disputed penalty, the amount payable will be different. So the Act has defined it in such a manner that if there is a quantum appeal involved, and in relation to that, there is a penalty appeal also, that will not be defined as disputed penalty. On the same analogy, disputed interest will also be there. For example, say take the case of in the case of penalty, right? Say for example, there is a 271B penalty that is there. So that is not linked to the disputed disputed tax in any appeal. So that will be a disputed penalty as per this definition. Okay. Similarly, disputed fee means any fee which is determined as per the provisions of this act against which the appeal has been filed by the appellant. This will also involve cases where the taxpayer has filed appeals wherein late fee has been charged under 234EF, mostly involving TDS matters. So then we'll have to understand what's the meaning of tax arrears. See, tax arrears will mean the aggregate of the following, of the four things. One, first, the disputed tax. We have already seen what is disputed tax. The interest either charged or chargeable on such disputed tax, penalty levied or leviable on such disputed tax. So this is the first bucket that is there. The second is disputed interest. Third will be disputed penalty, and the last is disputed fee. The aggregate of all these things will is defined as the tax arrears. Now coming to the most important part of the act, the amount payable for settlement of the tax dispute. See, the act has broadly divided the cases into two categories. One, where there is a disputed tax, related interest has already been charged, and penalty may or may not have been imposed, that could be imposable on such issues. So that's the first category of the cases. The second category of case is where there is no dispute on the tax portion, but the dispute is only with reference to either interest, penalty, or late fee. For the first bucket, that is where there is no dispute, where there is a disputed tax involved. Okay, the taxpayer will have to pay 100% of the disputed tax if the payment is made on or before 30th of June 2020. If he pays later than 30th June, but before the last date, which is yet to be specified, most likely it is to be 30th September, he has to pay 110% of the disputed tax. That is an ad hoc 10% over and above the disputed tax, which appears to be a compensating charge for deferment of the tax dues by the taxpayer beyond the period of 3 months. A small exception to the rule is if the case is related to search assessments. Okay, where you may remember that search assessments where tax demand is less than 5 crores is they are permitted to avail the benefits of the act. In such cases, right, the amount to be paid is 125% of the disputed tax if the amount is paid before 30th of June 2020, and 135% of the disputed tax if the amount is paid later. Probably, right, the framers of the law thought that in such cases, which invariably involve a higher degree of concealment, the taxpayer should be penalized in comparison to the normal taxpayers who have disputed tax due to legitimate differences and tax issues. With reference to the second category, where there is no dispute on the tax, but the dispute is only with reference to interest, penalty, or late fee, the taxpayer will have to pay 25% of the disputed interest or penalty or late fee if the payment is made before 30th of June 2020. If he pays later than 30th of June 2020, but before the last date, which I said is yet to be specified, he has to pay 30% of the disputed interest, penalty, and late fee. Please note that the original VSV Act had the cutoff date as 31st of March 2020 as against 30th June, what I have just stated. However, this date has been since amended by the Taxation and Other Laws, Relaxation of Certain Provisions Ordinance 2020 due to this COVID outbreak. The next important aspect here to note is that the Act has given a concession to pay only 50% of the amounts what we have already seen as calculated above in two specified scenarios. One is where the tax dispute is related to a departmental appeal. The dispute itself where the arises because the department has made an appeal against a particular order. That is invariably where you have got a favorable order and the department has gone on appeal against such order. And second is cases which involve a tax dispute where the taxpayer's pending appeal on a similar issue has been decided in favor of the taxpayer. Obviously, it will be there for another year. For the earlier years, there had been an appeal, and the taxpayer was successful in that particular appeal on the very same issue by an appellate by a higher appellate forum, which remains unturned by any superior forum. That should not have got reversed in the subsequent appellate forums. So, in these two category of cases, only 50% of the amounts, whatever we have seen in the earlier slides, to quantify that, and on that only 50% is to be payable. The concession has probably been given as the taxpayer is in these two cases are relatively on a better footing to win his case, although the odds of getting an adverse ruling may not be ruled out. Given India's complex taxation regime, the decision given by the ITAT can be overruled by High Court, Supreme Court, sometimes even maybe after several years. Some same legal issues being decided variedly by different high courts, or for that matter for different benches. So if the taxpayer has any apprehension that this could happen, that eventually something could go against him, even though he has got a favorable decision in lower appellate forum, he still has a chance to settle it rather than carry forward the litigation. Now, also please note that wherever the 25% or 35% or half of the amounts or the 17.5%, whatever is calculated of the disputed tax, right, exceeds the total of interest and penalty already charged, such excess amount shall have to be ignored for the purpose of computing the amount to be paid for the settlement. Next, we'll move to the procedure involved in making the application. See, whether it is the taxpayer or the department, whoever has filed the appeal, the taxpayer is required to file a declaration before a designated authority. The designated authorities will be notified under the Act, and I believe it will be the Principal Commissioner of Income Tax of the relevant jurisdiction. So what happens after the declaration is filed? Once the declaration is filed, designated authority will call for, obviously he will call for reports from the AO. Then he will proceed to make an order, issue a certificate under section 5(1) of the Act. So he will say, okay, this is the tax dispute, that certificate will state, and whatever is the amount to be paid for settlement under the VST Act. So the certificate will contain that. Once the certificate is issued, the appeal before the CIT and ITAT is deemed to have been withdrawn. See, these two categories of appeals, the Act says that these appeals will be deemed to have been withdrawn. But wherever the matters are pending before the High Courts, Supreme Courts, or matters involving arbitrations, the taxpayer will have to withdraw the appeal or the arbitration, as the case may be. The taxpayer will have to furnish the proof of such withdrawal from the court and intimate the same along with the intimation of making payment. There is a prescribed procedure to intimate that, okay, this is the amount we have paid under the Act. That has to be intimated to the designated authority. Along with that, right, he has to give the proof of withdrawals. So what's the time limit for this? We shall see in the subsequent slides. See, the most important thing is from the date on which the certificate under section 5(1) is issued, that is where the designated authority issues a certificate. Any okay, we have already got any appeal pending before the CIT appeals, ITAT is deemed to be withdrawn. So what's the consequence of declaration if it has been made under furnished with if the declaration contains any material particulars which is found to be false? See, the declaration shall be treated as null and void if any material particulars furnished in the declaration is found to be false at any stage, or the declarant violates any condition referred to in this Act, or the declarant acts in any manner which is not in line with the undertaking furnished by him under section 4(5) of the Act. In such cases, the consequence is that all proceedings and claims which were withdrawn under section 4 and all consequences under the Income Tax Act 1961 against the declaration which was earlier deemed to have been withdrawn shall stand revived. So next, moving to the timelines. With regard to the timelines, right, the Act has laid down the following timelines. First is, as I already said that the designated authority will have to make an order and issue a certificate. So that has to be issued within 15 days from the date of receipt of declaration filed by the taxpayer, specifying that that certificate will contain what is the amount of tax arrear and what is the amount payable for settlement under the Act. On receipt of that certificate, the declarant shall make the payment and intimate the same to the designated authorities. Here again, he will have to do it within 15 days from the date of receipt of the certificate from the designated authority. See, it may not be out of context here to add that the 15 days time limit to pass an order and issue a certificate, it has been relaxed by the Taxation Other Laws Relaxation of Certain Provisions Ordinance 2020. That is, if any such order or certificate had to be issued by the commissioner between the 20th of March 2020 to the 20th of June 2020, automatically the time limit shall stand extended to 30th of June. Obviously, they will not be doing it till wait till 30th June to pass the order, because they will have to give the taxpayer 15 days time to pay the amounts. So they will probably do it in May or June when the situation stabilizes. See, the most important feature to note is that the Act has provided that it shall not be open to any party to contend that on a declaration being filed, that the parties have acquiesced in the decision on the disputed issue. That is, okay, I have accepted the particular issue involved in that appeal. The Act does not intend so that it cannot be used in any other proceeding. Okay, in that particular proceeding you have accepted, you will have to accept here. So that is not the case. And lastly, all orders passed by the designated authority shall be conclusive, and no matter covered under the order shall be reopened by any income tax authority under any other act. So they do not want further dispute on this to go, because this itself is for settlement of the tax dispute. So they have said that these orders will not be appellable. The decision of the appellate designated authority shall be conclusive. Okay, coming to the immunity granted, I think there is some annotation because of which you are seeing some lines. I don't know how to disable it, we'll see later. With respect to the immunity granted, okay, the designated authority shall not initiate any proceeding in respect of any offense or impose any penalty or charge any interest under the Income Tax Act in respect of the tax arrear. Whatever is the amount tax arrear settled under this particular case, there will not be any further proceedings. They will not impose any penalty. They will not impose any interest. They will not go for prosecution and things like that. The next important thing is refunds. See, what the Act has provided is any amounts paid for settlement of the tax dispute under this Act shall not be refundable under any circumstances. See, you have paid an amount for settlement of the tax dispute. Later tomorrow you go and say, okay, no, this declaration has been filed, there are errors or something like, for whatever reason there is any change, you cannot go and ask for a refund. They have said that there will categorically said that there will not be any refund of tax paid. However, this takes us to another aspect of the issue. This in a case where the declarant has already paid either the full or part demand. See, there is an order. You have the taxpayer has already paid all the taxes due along with the interest and things like that. Of course, he has filed an appeal to keep the matter alive. So, in such cases, the Act has provided that he makes a declaration. When he makes a declaration now, the amount paid already will obviously be in excess of the amount payable under the scheme, because now he would have paid it along with interest. Now you get a waiver of interest, so that amount is bound to be in excess. So the Act has specifically provided that such excess amount will be refunded to the taxpayer. However, there is a caveat. The caveat is that such refund shall not carry any interest under section 244A. Okay, this is the caveat. The next other points. See, these are aspects which are mostly from the from the circular issued by the Central Board of Direct Taxes. See, the very same day the bill was introduced, passed by the Lok Sabha, the CBDT came out with the circular clarifying various aspects. I think there was some around 55 questions, aspects where they had clarified. So these are, we'll not discuss all those 55 issues. We will only discuss the important things. The first thing that is clarified is that the taxpayer cannot pick and choose amongst the issues involved in an assessment for settlement under the Act. The scheme is applicable for one appeal, and if it is applicable, if the taxpayer has opted, all the issues involved in the appeal should be settled under this scheme. See, of course, if the taxpayer has got a favorable verdict in his favor on the issue, the settlement amount is restricted to 50% of the amount actually payable. Also, if he has got a favorable verdict from a forum against which the department is in appeal, here again the amount payable will be 50% of the amount prescribed payable under the Act. The next important aspect clarified is that if both quantum appeal covering the disputed tax and appeal against penalty levied on such disputed tax for an assessment year is pending. See, there is a quantum appeal. There is also a penalty appeal for the same assessment year. The declaration is the declarant is required to file a declaration giving details of both the disputed tax appeal and as well as the penalty appeal. However, he is required to pay only the relevant percentage of the disputed tax only. He need not make a separate payment for the 25% or 35% for the penalty appeal separately, because as we have already seen, right, the definition of disputed tax and disputed interest, penalty and interest, wherever it is linked to the disputed tax directly, okay, since that interest and penalty is not covered under the definition of disputed tax. Okay, of course, it will be under the definition of tax arrear. It will not be a disputed penalty or a disputed interest. So he is required to pay only the disputed tax. This will settle both the appeals. However, the same analogy will not hold good for fees. If the fee imposed under section 234 E or F pertains to a year in which there is a disputed tax, the settlement of the disputed tax will not settle the disputed fee. If the assessee wants to settle the disputed fee in a separate appeal, he will have to file it separately by paying the prescribed percentage, 25% or 30% of the disputed fee, as the case may be. The other points, the board has clarified that in cases where TDS demands are pending in an appeal, on which a disallowance has also been made under section 40A(1)(a) in the assessment proceeding, which is also an appeal, on settlement of the TDS demand appeal, the deductor shall be entitled to consequential relief in his application for settlement of the regular appeal. Okay, he need not pay any amount to settle this particular issue. See, there is a 40A(1)(a) disallowance for which there is an appeal. There is also a TDS appeal for the very same amount, very same issue and assessment year. If he settles that TDS issue, this issue is also automatically settled. He did not pay any amount separately for this. The next question that has been clarified is that if the quantum appeal covering the disputed tax arrear as well as penalty appeals are pending. So again, quantum appeal is pending, disputed tax appeal is also pending. Can the taxpayer choose to settle only the penalty appeal by paying the prescribed fee? So the board has clarified that no, it is not possible. You cannot settle the disputed penalty appeal alone. You have to settle the penalty appeal. One second. Yeah, somebody from the audience, they told me how to remove those annotations. So I think we were in where they cannot settle the penalty appeal alone without settling the main quantum appeal. See, next clarification has been given in the context where the proceedings are only in the stage of 148 notice, which has been challenged by the taxpayer before a high court. It has been clarified by the board that such cases are not within the ambit of the Act for settlement. The answer is obvious on account of the fact that the additions have not been crystallized in the assessment, and hence the mechanism provided in the Act would be unworkable. So they have said that such cases are not eligible. Next is petitions for waiver of interest under section 234A, B, C, etc., which are pending, are not covered under the VSV Act. This is clarification number 13. Similarly, cases where the draft assessment order is passed by the AO and the taxpayer has filed an objection before the DRP is also covered. This we have already seen. The disputed tax will be computed based on the income determined by the AO in the draft assessment order. So that they have clarified this in clarification number 16. Next is disputes relating to wealth tax, securities transaction tax, commodity transaction tax, and equalization levy. They are not covered under the VSV Act. This has been clarified in question number 18. Next is the Vivad Se Vishwas Act is applicable in cases where the due date for filing of appeal is 31st of January 2020, but the appeal has not been filed. They have abundantly clarified that wherever such due dates for filing appeal have not been expired, even if the appeal has not been filed subsequently, those cases are also eligible to get the benefit under the Act. Next is where the assessee, being a person receiving an income, settles his own appeal or arbitration under the VSV Act, and such appeal or arbitration is reference to an assessment of an income which was subjected to TDS by the payer of the income, which was not subjected to TDS by the payer of such income. Obviously, he becomes the assessee in default, and an order under section 201 of the Act has been passed against such deductor in default. So where you are the recipient of income, somebody has not deducted tax. So he has also been, there has been a demand in that case for the TDS default. Then such deductor in default would not, and see where the and an order under section 201 has been made passed against such deductor in default, then such deductor in default would not be required to pay the corresponding TDS amount. I think there is a question. I think we will take it up at the end. Would not be required to pay the corresponding TDS amount. However, he would be required to pay the interest under section 201(1)(a). If such levy of interest under subsection 201(1)(a) qualifies for Vivad Se Vishwas scheme, the deductor can settle his dispute by paying 25% or 30% of the disputed interest, as the case may be, by filling up the relevant schedule of disputed interest. Next is filing of the forms prescribed under the Act. See, the Act has prescribed 5 forms. Okay, form number 1, which is the form for filing of declaration. Form number 2, which is the undertaking to be provided by the taxpayer under section 4.5. Form number 3, which is the form of certificate under section 5.1, which is to be issued by the designated authority. Form number 4, where we have to give the details of the taxpayer will have to intimate the details of the payment made, and form number 5, which is the order to be given by the designated authority for full and final settlement of the tax arrears. After we have paid the amount, they will issue a certificate that the tax arrears has been settled. So what's the content of Form 1? See, Form 1 has 5 parts. See, part A is general information about the SCV, permanent PAN number, assessment year, and things like that. Part B has the information relating to the dispute, where what kind of dispute it is, whether it is the appeal pending before CAT appeals or IT and things like that. Part C is the information related to the tax arrears. See, first we'll have to give what is the tax arrears. So for that, to quantify that, they are taking the information in Part C. Part D is information related to the amount payable under the Act. For settlement, what is the amount to be paid? So that details will be there in Part D. And Part E, information related to the payments already made. As I have said that if the taxpayer has already paid a full or part amount of the tax arrear rate, he can reduce that amount from the amount payable. Balance, if any is there, it will be refunded to him. So Part E will have all the information related to the payments already made. The schedule is to the Form 1 is to be filled up in accordance to the nature of dispute. See, Part C, if you look at Part C, it has got various schedules. Again, this has been divided into A schedules, B schedules, and C schedules. Each one, I think, has got 10 different schedules, depending on what is the nature of dispute. For example, if there is a disputed tax, which is pending before the CIT appeal, and the assessee is the appellant, he will have to fill the information in schedule 1 to the A schedules. So we can take another case where there is a disputed tax and the appeal is pending before the ITAT and it is a departmental appeal, then schedule 5 is will have to be filled. So based on whatever is the information that you are filling up in this A schedule, that will get populated in part C. And the most important thing is this A schedules relates to tax arrears relating to a prescribed PAN. Say wherever any tax arrear relates to a particular PAN number, so information will have to be given in this particular schedule. See, B schedules will have details relating to the tax arrears if it is related to a TAN. See, wherever there is disputed TDS, TCS, and things like that. So all the information will have to be provided there. As in A schedules, right? The B schedule has also 9 schedules. Depending on the nature of the tax dispute, where it is collected, who has filed, we will have to fill up the information in the schedule. For example, if there is a disputed TDS, TCS, which is pending before the High Court, and if the department is the appellant, the information in schedule 5 needs to be filled. Schedule 5 of B schedule needs to be filled. And last is C schedules, wherever the declaration relates to disputed penalty, interest or fee only. There is disputed tax is not there. There is only an issue, an appeal related to disputed penalty, interest or fee. So in this particular case, here again, there are 9 schedules which has been prescribed. So depending on the nature of dispute, where the appeal is pending and who has filed the appeal, the information, the relevant schedule will have to be filled up. For example, if the disputed issue is before the Supreme Court and the RC has filed the appeal, the information will have to be provided in schedule 6 of C schedule, where it relates to disputed penalty and interest or fee only. See, next is D schedule, where we have already seen that where there is there are additions which involve carry forward of MAT credit or AMT credit or business loss or depreciation. So in those cases, you have an option either to pay a tax amount and carry forward the originally determined amounts, or carry forward the reduced amounts. So the information relating to that will have to be provided in D schedule. So I think now broadly we have seen the forms and what schedule is to be filled. So we look at how to apply for the VSV scheme. See, the application module is there in the website incometaxindia.efiling.gov.in. Once the taxpayer logs in with his PAN user ID, at the right hand corner you will find prepare and submit DTSV forms. Okay, they'll have to select that. Then we'll have to select what is the assessment year involved, whether the filing is original or revised. I presume from the screen that they are also allowing us to revise the application. Then the information there are different tabs, part A, part B. All this, as I've said, part A is general information, part B is information relating to the dispute. Part C, again, this has got various schedules. I have detailed that as one. Once you fill up the information in this schedule according to the nature of the dispute, forum where it is pending, who has filed the appeal, from that relevant schedule, the information flows to the part C. So there in filling up part C itself, they are asking, so depending on what is the amount of percentage to be paid under the VSV Act, on or before the specified date, after the specified date. So depending on that, the fourth part, part D of the application gets filled in. So this is just a screenshot where we select the nature of tax, assessment year, section under which the assessment order is passed, where the appeal is pending. So here we'll have to give information relating to the dispute, whether it is a DRP case, whether revision case, whatever we have discussed, right? Because all that needs to be captured in the application form. So all the information needs to be filled in. So we'll have to input the date of assessment order, whether it's a search case or not, because search case has a different amount payable, whether it is an appeal, objection, revision, what's the appellate forum and things like that. In case the appeal is filed, we will have to give the date of filing of appeal, what is the reference number of appeal, who has filed the appeal, whether it's by the appel assessee or the department, because depending on that, the amount payable differs. So all that has to be captured. And if there is a penalty levied as a result of the said assessment order, and an appeal is also pending with respect to penalty, right? So we'll have to give the details of the penalty appeal. This is important because if there is a quantum appeal involved on settlement of that tax dispute by paying 100% of the tax amount, the penalty appeal will also get settled. No separate payment is required. So they are capturing the details of whatever is the penalty appeal involved in relation to the tax arrear. So once we fill the information, right, we'll have to go to part C. We'll have to fill the A schedule, B schedule, or C schedule. In that particular schedule, schedule number 1, 2, 3, as I've explained. So based on that, the amount gets populated here. The tax arrears, it will get pre-filled in part C, depending on what you enter. One second. And the amount payable under scheme gets pre-filled under part D. If any tax has been remitted towards the outstanding tax arrears, please fill the payment of details in part D. As I have already said, the same gets adjusted against the tax payable under the Act, and the net amount is reflected in part F. This will be the, of course, it's very small. Whatever is the final amount that is required to be paid, it will get populated in part F. Then you'll have to fill in the verification section and submit it using DSC or Aadhaar OTP. So this takes us to the end of the presentation. Okay, if there are queries, it can be taken. See, we have already received one set of query by email. Since it has been circulated to us by email, right? I have already put the facts and what is there. This has been circulated by Ravichandran sir. So his query is, he has briefly stated the facts. Actually, we have exactly reproduced what he has said. I'll just go 1 second. Okay, his query in a nutshell was, see, there is an original return of income which is filed with, of course, he has said that all numbers are imaginary. Numbers need not be accurate. The tax and the interest calculations need not be accurate. He has just given an example. So from his example, from whatever numbers he has given, right, there is a tax, the SC has filed the original return of income with 10,01,000. The tax on the above is 1,30,000 and interest is 12,000, which takes us, which makes the total tax payable as 142. There is a TDS credit of 62,000 and the balance has been paid as self-assessment tax. The assessing officer has completed the assessment and he has determined the income at 23 lakhs. So the tax on the above is 5,30,000, and he has levied and charged an interest of 1,80,000, all under 234 ABC or AB. For C, there will not be any variation. Making the total tax payable at 7,10,000. Again, you reduce the amount of 62,000 TDS credit and self-assessment tax 80,000. The outstanding tax demand is 5,68,000. So in this case, he has asked the following queries. What is the amount of refund the SC will get back based on the provisions contained in the DTSP Act? So his question seems to be whether as per the original return of income, whatever was the 234 ABC interest which was there in the return filed by the SC, will that also will get the benefit? So that is the second question. And he has asked, he has cited some forms, the information in forms to justify, to raise these queries. So we'll see how the computation of disputed tax in this case will work. See, the additions as per the assessment order is 12,99,000. The tax on disputed additions, the tax on additions, that is the disputed tax in this case is 4 lakhs, and the interest on disputed tax is 168. So if you see the earlier side, the difference between 180 and 12,000, obviously that will be the interest on disputed tax. So making the gross demand at 5,68,000. See, the amount payable under the scheme, if it is paid on or before 30th of June 2020, will be 100% of the disputed tax. In this case, it is 4 lakhs. Okay. He has already paid the gross demand of 5,68,000 before filing of the appeal or before the specified date. So in that case, that amount will stand reduced and he will be entitled to a refund of 1,68,000. If the amount is paid after 30th June, he will have to pay 110% of the disputed tax. The disputed tax is 4 lakhs. So 110% will work out to 4,40,000. Reducing the amount of 568 he has already paid, he will be entitled to a refund of 1,28,000. So in A schedule, as I have already said, in the A schedules, in the A schedules, see, he will have to give the details. See, wherever it is a search related, where it is covered under, where it is covered by any favorable appellate forum, he will have to fill it in B1. Otherwise, it will be in B2. So, disputed tax in relation to B2, it is 4 lakhs. The interest charged and disputed tax is 1,68,000, making the tax arrears at 5,68,000. So, whatever computation we have already made, if the amount is paid on or before 30th of June 2020, the old form it is as 31st of March 2020 because we have taken it from the rules which is prescribed, but now it is 30th June. So amount payable will be 4 lakhs, and if it is paid after 30th of June, the amount payable will be 4,40,000. So this information gets populated in part C of form 1. And in part D, he will obviously reduce the amount already paid, and balance it will be payable as balance will be refundable to the assessee. The next question is again from him, where he has received an intimation on 2/1/2020, and whether see the time limit for filing against an intimation also an appeal can be filed. So the time limit has not expired for filing the appeal. So in such cases, he is asking whether the 234 ABC charged will interest that also he can get benefit under the act. The answer is no. Wherever there is a disputed tax, only on that the related disputed interest on the disputed tax will be qualifying for this one. See, where a wrong, next question is where the designated authority has passed a wrong order when he is determining the amount payable. So what's the remedy? What's the immunity to such case? See, obviously there is no such no appeal mechanism provided under the DTVSP Act. So only thing is we'll have to only this remedy provided is the designated authority is empowered to revise the intimation issued by him, certificate issued by him. So in case we receive any such certificates, we'll have to represent to the designated authority, get the certificate rectified. So that is he can revise that and reissue the certificate. That is option number 1. And option number 2, in case that does not work, the only way is writ. Of course, the act has not provided, but writs will be entertainable if it is patently illegal. The order is patently illegal. So next is he has asked whether it will be applicable to 147 assessment orders passed for assessment year 12-13. He has said that all complaints are not violated. Obviously, yes, it will be eligible in case the appeal has been filed or the due date for filing appeal has not expired as of 31st of January 2020. He can take benefit of that. In such case, 234 ABC interest waiver, he will get relief. Yeah, that's the end of the presentation. If there are any further questions, we can take. Madam, Chairman, Madam, you are in mute.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for a detailed explanation, along with the step-by-step form filling, along with the queries which was raised by the members. Now we will go for question and interactive session. I request all the members who are going to ask any queries to raise their hands, which was given in the reaction button. Just give on to click and raise the hands. Now one question from Natesan sir. I just unmute him. You just ask the.
I think I can read. He has said that I have an.
It was already given in the chat, sir.
Yeah, I have an assessee in whose case the following appeals are pending before the CIT appeals after being set aside by ITAT to CIT appeal, appeal against quantum assessment, appeal against penalty under section 271(1)(c), and appeal against 221. Is it enough if he files a petition for quantum assessment? Should he file separately for penalty under 221? Further, TRO levied Rule 5 interest during the course of assessment pudding, the same was paid by the SC. Whether he will be eligible to claim. Yes, there is only one, he has to settle the quantum appeal, based on which the penalty appeal and other related appeals will also stand discharged. Whatever amount has been paid, recovered by the department, you can claim credit against the tax payable under this act. If it is excess paid, it will be refundable.
Natesan sir, is it okay?
Fine, ma'am.
Any other questions?
One question from Pazhinappan, sir. 1 second, sir. Sir, Pazhinappan, sir, you can go ahead with you.
In the case of a trust, if we file a condonation petition under section Form 10 delay in filing Form 10, whether we go for this scheme.
No, it cannot.
Assessment completion, after assessment completed.
No. Condemnation petitions are not covered under this scheme, sir. If there is an appeal pending, yes, they can take benefit, but condemnation petitions are not within the ambit of this.
Even after getting an assessment order.
Yes.
They are demanding that.
If there is an appeal pending in any forum, they can take benefit of this one. If there is no appeal pending, only a condemnation petition has been filed either before the commissioner or the board, then they are not entitled.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Then one more question is from, I don't know his name. It mentioned as Galaxy M. I just unmute him. The participant name mentioned as Galaxy M20.
Yeah, go ahead. Sir, please go ahead. I think your mobile name is getting displayed.
Yes, sir. No more further questions, sir.
I think I'll try to send a message.
Yes, sir. I welcome our SARC chairman, C. Dungal Sir Jain, to the meeting. I request him to give his special address to our members.
Good evening, sir. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, welcome to the meeting, sir.
Good evening, all of you. At the outset, let me congratulate Pondicherry branch. See that the time is made effective use of by these useful sessions, and congratulate C. Meenakshi Sundar. I was there only for a short 15-20 minutes, but I could see the way he has taken through the slides and also handling the question and answers. I would only like to take this opportunity to tell you that on 13th April 2020, evening 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., we have a global summit. I will request everybody to join, and I request branch to share the links to all the members so that it's one program where all the platforms or accounting body globally are coming at one place. And our president is keen to see that we host that program, and I request everybody to join for that program. And second is our ICI COVID-19 Relief Fund. I appeal on behalf of the president of ICI to contribute a minimum of rupees 5,000. And 5,000 is only a yardstick. It can be more, it can be less. Some yardstick for us to get going. Kindly contribute graciously as a mark to show our unity, strength, and solidarity towards our nation. So kindly contribute and see that the target of internal target what we have put for 21 crore to be contributed is kind of being taken care. Another thing which I thought which you can all use during this lockdown is this DCMM model, Digital Competence Maturity Model. There is a small template which has been given by the institute. This is a tool for you to find how technology capable you are. So now you realize when you go back to offices, you feel, had I did these certain things of my work could have got over. So it is a time that when you get back, we don't know whether the lockdown is going to get opened on 15th or it is going to go on some other date. But whatever be the date and whatever you could start thinking of how to take your firm profession take forward using technology, kindly use this DCMM model. Our president has also insisted on this. And the good thing about this is by seeing the parameters, it shows where you are and it can show you the areas where you need to improve upon. So this one message I thought I'll share it with you and see that your time is made effective use of. And rest, if there is anything for you to ask me, I'm ready to take your queries, apart from Vivad Se Vishwas. I think there is nothing, Kritika ma'am, you can take over.
Sir, thank you, sir. I request our secretary, Sadish Kumar, sir, to give his vote of thanks.
Good evening. Good evening.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Is your voice not?
Okay. Good evening, one and all. On behalf of Pondicherry branch of SASICA, I thank our chairman, SASI chairman, DC Jain, who have participated in this webinar and give his special address. And I thank CA Meenakshi Sundar for sharing his knowledge, thoughts, and opinion with us. I thank all members who have participated in this webinar. Once again, I thank all to make this day great one. Thank you, one and all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, sir. We'll just say session and we will see it on Monday evening, saying 5 o'clock.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all.